I'm worth a lot to thee. And then I hear him gently say to me, I left the throne of glory and counted in the loss. My hands were nailed in anger upon a cruel cross. But now we'll make the journey with your hands safe in mine. So lift your cross and follow close to me. Oh Jesus, if I die upon a foreign field someday, would be no more than lucky best, no less could I repay. No greater love that mortal men than for a friend to die. These are the words he gently spoke to me. And just a cup of water I place within your hand. Then just a cup of water is all that I demand. But if my death deliver me, they can my glory see. I'll take my cross and follow close to thee.
So it's good to be here tonight. It's good to see each one out. We'll get started. We'll go to the Lord in prayer. Let's continue to remember Barbara's mom. I think it's just really a matter of time. They got her, I think, giving her morphine, or I think pretty regular now. So just keep her in your prayers, and Barbara and the family, and continue to pray for each other. All those in church that are sick. Remember the lost. Anybody have a spoken request on your heart this morning or today?
Lily.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Wanted us to remember one of her printers. She said that he was in the hospital he was in ICU on the ventilator.
Yeah, remember that. Anybody else?
Remember those that were involved in the shooting today?
Yeah.
I think there was one fatality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mike's mom and dad.
Yeah, I remember Mike's mom and dad. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe by way of uplifted hand. We'll ask Brother Benjamin if he'll lead us tonight. Man. So again, it is good to be here. We got down to Psalms 102. Start there tonight. You pray for us that bring us out in a way we can understand it, a way to be pleasing unto Him. Don't know how far we'll get, or don't know how far we'll get tonight, but we just mind the Lord. In Psalms 102, this is David makes his complaint, and he takes comfort in the eternity and mercy of God. It's a prayer of the afflicted when he becomes overwhelmed and when he pours out his complaint before the Lord. The Bible tells us that we're to go to Him. We're to go to Him with a broken, contrite spirit. We're to ask Him to help us, to lead us, to guide us, and direct us in the path He'd have us to go. But in Psalms 102, verse 1, it says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and let my cry come unto Thee." Now, here the psalmist, he said, Lord, hear my prayer. Let my cry come unto Thee. Now, here David, he begins crying out to God for help, for not only thanking Him for what He's done, but he asks God to help him, to lead him and show him what as king He would have him to do. But I thought about this verse. It says, "Let my cry come unto Thee." There's several places in the Bible that speaks about crying out to God, and I want us to look at 7 different cries to God tonight. First one, if you want to turn with us, turn to the 25th chapter of the book of Genesis, and you pray for us tonight that we could bring us out in a way that be pleasing unto Him. But in the 25th chapter of the book of Genesis, we'll find the story of Jacob and Esau. And we know that Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. And so in chapter 25, we'll begin reading in, verse 21. It says, "And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out. His hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die. And what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So here we find a story of Esau and Jacob. I guess you know twins. Esau, the Bible said, came out first, and then Jacob come out second. In the Old Testament times, the firstborn would receive what they called the birthright. And what this meant was that there were certain privileges and certain things that the eldest son would get after his father died. If his father said, maybe run a business or something, the elder son would automatically receive that. It would be his when his father passed. So it says Esau was a hunter. Esau, he went out into the field and he would kill animals and come back and fix venison. And his father Isaac, he loved that. He loved the meat that Esau had prepared for him. But the Bible said that Isaac loved Esau and Rebekah loved Jacob. I'm sure that they probably loved both sons probably the same, but each one, or the father had, I guess what you might say, his favorite, and the mother had her favorite. So Esau had the right to the birth, or he owned the rights to the birthright. So he'd been out hunting and came in, and he was hungry. And Jacob said Jacob sawed pottage, or in other words, he was preparing pottage of lentils. And what this is a plant that it's got a pod, I guess you might, it's like a pea or a bean or something. And the seeds in this, they use it to cook, they cook this, and it's a food. And there's different types of this. One is red. And the lentils that Jacob were using must have been red because he said this red pottage. So Esau came in hungry and wanted Jacob to feed him. So Jacob automatically seen come up with a scheme, a good way for him to get what that Esau would get at Isaac, or at Isaac's death. So he told him that to sell me this day thy birthright. So Esau said, well, I'm at the point to die. So what good's the birthright going to do me? So he sold him the birthright for a piece of bread, and I guess you might say a piece of bread, and a glass of water, and a bowl of beans. And that's pretty cheap price for something, a possession like that Esau would have gained. But it said in the 34th verse that Esau despised his birthright. In other words, Esau, he disobeyed God's plan. Esau was to be the firstborn, and it was through Esau that the lineage of Christ would come. But Esau sold, I guess what you'd say, sold God out. And there's a lot of people's done the same thing tonight, hadn't they? There's a lot of people selling God out. And for a whole lot less than what Esau sold his birthright out for. Some people today, they sell they'll sell themselves out for money. They'll work, 7 days a week to try to, get all the money that they can. But what good, as Esau said, I'm at the point, I'm going to die, I'm going to starve to death, so what good's this birthright going to do me? What good's this money going to do people? The Bible said, what will it profit you if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? Or what would a man give in exchange for his soul? People selling God out in this day and hour that we live, for nothing. But the first cry we'll find was a cry for help. And then in chapter 27, Genesis, begin verse 1. The Bible says, "And it came to pass when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son, and said unto him, My son. And he said unto him, Behold, here I am. And he said, Behold, now I am old. I know not the day of my death. Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, and thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless thee before I die. And Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison, and to bring it. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord, that I may bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock, and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, and not a blessing. And his mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse. My son, obey my voice, and go and fetch me them. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat, such as his father loved. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. And she put skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands, and upon the smooth of his neck. And she gave him the savory meat and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. Now, to sum up the rest of the story, Jacob took the meal that was prepared into his father Isaac, and Isaac, he said, you feel like, he touched his hands, and he said, you feel like my son Esau, but you sound like Jacob. So Jacob deceived Isaac, tricked him, I guess you might say, into giving him the blessing before his death. So then in verse 41, it says, And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. And these words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah. And she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said unto him, Behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise, flee thou to Laban my brother, to Haran, and tarry with him a few days, until thy brother's fury turn away, until thy brother's anger turn away from thee, and he forget that which thou hast done to him. Then I will send and fetch thee from thence. Why should I be deprived also of you both in one day? So Esau, after he had heard that his father had blessed Jacob, Esau purposed in his heart that he was going to kill Jacob. That he's going to take his life for what he'd done to him. So Rebekah told Jacob to go to her brother's house and hide there. And then when Esau got over it a little bit, she'd send for him. But, God has a way of working things out. In chapter 32, in verse 24. In chapter 32, verse 24 through 26, says, And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him unto the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. So here was Jacob's cry for help. Jacob, back on verse 7, says, Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. And he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two bands. And said, If Esau come to one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which saith unto me, Return unto thy country, and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth, which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the children. And thou saidst, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And he lodged there that same night, and took that which came to his hand, a present for Esau his brother. So Jacob had got word that Esau was coming, and he's bringing 400 men with him. So Jacob feared that Esau was coming to take his life, but God was working on both sides. God was dealing with Jacob, was blessing Jacob, and blessing Esau at the same time. So in chapter 33, it says, And Jacob lifted up his eyes, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the two handmaids. And he put the handmaids and their children foremost, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. And he passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So Esau came to Jacob. And Jacob told Esau, or I guess you might say more or less tried to apologize to Esau and give him back what was rightly his. But Esau told him, No, God's blessed me, you keep it. So we find out that Jacob, he sent a cry out for help to deliver him from the hand of his brother, and God delivered him. How many times has God delivered us when we cry out for help from him? And then the second one, talk about is a cry of intercession. And we'll find it in the book of Exodus, in Exodus 32, verses 31 through 32. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, O this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Therefore go, lead the people unto the place of which I have spoken unto thee. Behold, mine angel shall go before thee. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them. So here we find a cry that Moses, God had sent Moses on Mount Sinai. It was there, it's where that God was talking to Moses. And the children of Israel had seen that Moses, he'd been up there a while, so they thought that God had killed him. So they made a golden calf and began to worship it. Moses came down, he saw what was going on, and instead of God destroying all the people at that time, Moses interceded on their behalf. Moses asked God to forgive them, not to take all their lives. I'm glad tonight that we had somebody that interceded on our behalf. Glad that somebody prayed for us before we were saved. The next one is a cry for wisdom. And we'll find that in 1 Kings, the story of Solomon. Solomon, God had told Solomon that, ask whatever of him that he wanted and God would grant it. Instead of asking for riches and all these things, Solomon, he said, "And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this, thy so great a people?" So Solomon, he cried out for wisdom. He cried out that God would grant him the wisdom to be able to discern right from wrong for his people, to be the king that God would have him to be. We need to cry out to God tonight that God would give us wisdom, give us what we need tonight to go out in this lost and dying world and let them know, what that God can do for them, and that He loves them, and show them the things that they're doing is wrong. That God give us the wisdom and the knowledge we need to be a witness. And then the next one we find was a cry for cleansing. The story of David, how that David, when it was a time that David should have been out in front of the battle, how that David went up and saw Bathsheba, and how that David committed adultery with Bathsheba, then had Bathsheba's husband sent to the front of the battle and killed, and Nathan came to David and told him the story about the man that had the one little ewe lamb, and about the rich man. The rich man had the visitor, and instead of taking one of his out of his flock, he sent and took the only thing the poor man had, and killed it and dressed it and fed it to the visitor that came there that night. And David got mad, and David said, this man ought to be put to death. And Nathan said, "David, you're the man. You're the one done this." So we see in Psalms 51, verses 1 through 3, David cries out for cleansing. It says, "Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. According unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me." So David asks that God cleanse him, that God would forgive him of what he had done. There's not a one of us in here tonight that's perfect. We all sin and come short of God's glory every day. We're to, as Paul said, Paul said, I die daily. I believe Paul was in a habit before he got up out of his bed. I believe Paul prayed and asked God to help him through the day, to help him to be the kind of man that God would have him to be. And then before he pilled his head at night, I believe Paul asked God to forgive him the things that he should have done and the things that he shouldn't have done that he did. And that's what each one of us need to do. We need to cry out for cleansing. Cry out that God would forgive us. And then we find the cry of a dying soul. In 23rd chapter of the book of Luke, we know the story how that Jesus at the crucifixion, when they went up on Golgotha's hill, that there were two malefactors, two thieves, was there with Jesus, one on each side. And we know how that the Bible tells us that the one cried out and asked Jesus, said, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. So here we find the cry of a dying soul. This thief knew that he was going to die. He knew that the sins, the things that he had done, that he was guilty. That this man that was hanging there on the cross beside of him, he'd done nothing wrong. He recognized him as who he was, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So he asked him to remember him when he come into his kingdom. And I believe right then God saved that thief on the cross. And I believe that same day, that thief, when the breath left his body, I believe the soul went to be with God in paradise. It's cry for the cry of the dying. In 16th chapter of Luke, we find the cry of salvation. Remember the story of the Philippian jailer? How that Paul and Silas had been thrown in prison, and they had been put in the innermost part of the prison, the dungeon, I guess, so to speak. And the jailer was required to make sure that they didn't escape. And while the jailer was asleep, God shook the earth, and Paul and Silas, they were in the dungeon praying, singing hymns. Not like what we've been doing. We've been down there complaining. They had beat Paul and Silas. They had whipped them. Their backs were probably bleeding, and it's cold and damp and wet. And we had been complaining, but they were down there singing songs and praising God and praying. And God heard their prayer and opened their bands were loosed, and the door of the prison was open, and says, and the keeper of the prison, awaking out of his sleep and seeing the prison doors open, he drew out his sword and would have killed himself, supposing that the prisoners had been fled. The jailer knew that come morning, when it was found out that the prisoners were gone, if they escaped, then he would have to answer for that with his own life. He would have to take their place. So he drew out his sword, and he was going to kill himself. But Paul cried out with a loud voice, saying, do thyself no harm, for we are all here. Then he called for a light and sprang in, and came trembling, fell down before Paul and Silas, and brought them out and said, sirs, what must I do to be saved? That's the question that, or the cry that I wish that this world would make. What must I do to be saved? Especially a lot of folks we've got running around today, they need salvation. They need Jesus. And the last one is a cry for deliverance. We'll find it in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Beginning verse 7. Paul, as Paul was traveling around, a lot of the people in Paul's day, they wanted to exalt Paul. They wanted to put him on a pedestal and you know, I guess more or less worship Paul. And Paul said, you know, I'm not, said, you know, don't worship me. I'm nothing. You know, and he told him, he said, at least I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations. There was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So Paul prayed 3 times that God would remove this thorn, whatever it is. Some say that Paul's eyesight had gotten bad, and that the thorn in the flesh was Paul's eyesight was failing him. I don't know exactly what this thorn was, but God caused Paul to have the thorn in the flesh, so that Paul would realize that who God was, that Paul would keep God first, that he would never put himself above God. And you know, I believe that, or I wish that man would do that today. We've got so many people today that they'll stick their chest out and say, you know, look what I've done. Look at all the good works, all the good deeds that I've done. You know, build these big libraries and got these big airplanes and all these things, and stick their nose up and say, look what I'm doing. Well, I've not done nothing, and neither have they. It's God that does it, not man. Anybody got anything to say on this tonight? I know it's sort of been a little off, but I just felt led to bring this out tonight. Anybody have anything to say? If not, then we'll stand to our feet and we'll be dismissed. Remember the meal the young people's fixing Saturday at 5, I think. Is that right? Yeah, 5. Saturday at 5. Remember that. Remember these prayer requests. I'll ask Brother Dale if he will dismiss us.